Most of the time, the truth is not hiding. We are. This is You're Probably Right, a podcast about relationships, responsibility, and the stories we tell ourselves when reality gets uncomfortable. I'm Michael Charles Murray. Let's get into it. Hey, y'all. Remember, this episode, like all the other episodes, are for, or is for, entertainment purposes only. You know, one of the interesting things about doing a podcast for this long is that you never really know when an episode is going to find the person that it was made for. You know what I mean? Maybe not. You see, I've been doing You're Probably Right for years now. There have been thousands of listeners across the show, and I've had episodes that I recorded, moved on from, and then much later realized people were still finding. And I think that's one of the strange things about audio podcasts, especially now. You see, there's no giant studio here. I'm not sitting across from some athlete or movie star. I'm not chasing whatever happened 15 minutes ago. Most of the time, I'm sitting here trying to get underneath something. Why do people do this? Why did I react that way? Why do relationships go the way they do? Why did that particular thing bother me? Why do people believe something just because somebody said it confidently? Why can one person explain something in 20 seconds and another person need 4 minutes, even though the person taking the 4 minutes might actually understand the situation or the information better? That's the kind of stuff that I think about. Maybe people will say that it's because of that episode where I said I glitch. Maybe. And I've always imagined this show reaching somebody while they're already doing something else. Maybe you're driving, maybe you're on a bus, maybe you're cutting the grass, or maybe you're cleaning the kitchen. Maybe you're lying in bed and you can't sleep and you said, let me just put something on. Well, yeah, this is something, all right. Maybe you're just sitting there somewhere by yourself and you want something thoughtful playing in the background. And if that's you, today's topic or today's episode might be an interesting one. Because recently I started doing something that was supposed to be fairly simple. You see, I started testing how I think. Now, not some official psychological evaluation, not an IQ test, not an online quiz or survey, not somebody sitting across from me with a clipboard deciding whether I'm brilliant or an idiot. Just a whole series of exercises, reasoning questions, memory exercises, word retrieval, logic, pattern recognition, thinking on my feet, explaining concepts, arguing both sides of something, remembering stories, remembering numbers, switching between categories, manipulating information in my head. Yeah, this is the kind of stuff I did or do. You know, and even saying it out loud, and this is what I'm trying to tell you. This is how my mind works. As I'm saying it to you now, I'm thinking of something else, and this is what happens to me all the time. Um, maybe it's onset early or something, you know. Um, I remember one day, and I'm going to veer off into a story as usual. I remember one day I was hanging out with my friend. I think we were college age. We were probably, we are probably around 20, maybe, yeah, 19, 20. And we actually met up with somebody that we went to yeah, we went to elementary school with her, and he went to junior high with her because yes, that was junior high back then, and we both went to high school with her. But I knew her a lot longer. She was in my kindergarten class, and he probably met her when we were in grade 4. And the funny thing about it, sometimes you know people and you don't realize how well they know you or how much they watch you, even if you don't hang around the same circles. And she said, I remember you guys. They used to call you, and he had a nickname. And then she said it, but you, Mike, she goes, you were an undercover nerd. I was like, what the heck? She goes, yeah, that's right. And it wasn't that I was some, pocket protector, uh, pens in the pocket dude. It wasn't that. She said it was undercover because I would play on every team. I would hang out with the so-called cool kids or whatever it was. But then she would never see me anywhere. I was always in class, never skipped, and never go anywhere, never do anything except I was in class and on most of the athletic teams. And I just found it kind of funny that I guess that was her definition of it. But I guess as she said it, I was kind of looking at myself differently. So that long list of the stuff that I was going through, and I remember nobody's administering this test, right? This is just something that I'm thinking of doing on my own. So as I said, reasoning questions, memory exercises, word retrieval, logic, pattern recognition, thinking on my feet questions, explaining concepts, arguing both sides of an argument, remembering stories, remembering numbers, switching between categories, manipulating information in my head. Basically, trying to figure out whether I actually have a good memory, whether I can think quickly, whether I really have this so called gift of gab, whether I reason properly, or whether I've just become very good at talking long enough until something intelligent eventually falls out. That's basically how I feel about it. And I learned quite a bit. Not necessarily about whether I'm smart. I don't even think that's the interesting question anymore. Of course, we all want to know, right? Who hasn't tried to take one of those online IQ tests? Probably only people who've taken real IQ tests in recent memory, but you have to pay for those psych assessments these days. And sometimes your insurance pays for it, but anyway, neither here nor there, as they say. So, what became interesting was how differently somebody can perform depending on what exactly their brain is being asked to do. And one of the first things I started noticing was this: having difficulty communicating is not necessarily the same thing as having difficulty communicating while somebody is evaluating you. Those are different things. Because there are situations where I can talk forever, as many of you understand and know by now. Give me something I'm interested in: relationships, human behavior, something happening at work, something I've seen online, some contradiction that doesn't make sense. Somebody says something with way too much confidence, and I think, wait a minute, that's not exactly true. I can go, I can come with examples, I can make comparisons, I can argue against my own point, I can find holes in an argument, I can come up with a joke. I can probably develop an entire philosophy around something that didn't really need a philosophy in the first place. Yeah, that's me. That's generally not the problem. The problem changes when somebody is sitting directly in front of me waiting for an answer. I remember being in my boss's office one day. Yes, my boss back in the day, right? There was a number of girls, women, I guess, having some sort of a conflict. You know, they would have been around, I would say around 40, 45. I guess their ages probably aren't really important. Anyway, one woman said this. She said that, and another girl said this, and somebody else said that, and somebody heard something else, and somebody denied something. There were different versions going around. And I guess my boss was trying to get to the bottom of what was happening in the department. And we were trying to figure out exactly what happened. And my boss wanted a synopsis. Basically, Michael, give me the short version. And that's where somebody like me can get into trouble. Because I'm not only trying to remember what happened, right? I'm trying to separate what happened from what somebody told me happened. And those aren't the same thing. What did I actually witness? What was reported to me? What do I think probably happened? What can't I prove? What conflicts, or sorry, what conflicts, is that it? See, what conflicts with something else I've been told? And I'm about to say something about, a 45-year-old woman, and though it's a fact, when I don't actually know that it's a fact, or just trying to say something because I've been asked, right, to answer. Now, add another task. I'm looking at my boss's face and I can tell she wants me to hurry up. Uh-oh. Maybe she's busy, maybe I'm taking too long, maybe she already understands where I'm going. So it's like kind of just go 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 get with it. Maybe she doesn't know. I don't know. But now I'm not just trying to explain the incident anymore. And I don't know if this happens to you. Explaining the incident while also processing her reactions to me explaining the incident. And that's a different mental task, you see. And I think some people are going to recognize themselves in this because you can know exactly what you're talking about. Then somebody gives you a look, their eyebrow moves, they sigh, they roll their eyes. That's it. Now you're thinking about those movements. You're thinking about the eyes rolling or the eyebrow. Was that confusion? Is she dubious? Uh, was that irritation? Did I lose them? Am I taking too long? Should I shorten this? Where was I? Now, I understand that most people don't usually talk about things like this out loud. That's what this podcast is. I literally come up with these things like they're like apparitions in my mind, and I just figure there must be some other people who go through some of these things, and that's why sometimes you'll understand a podcast episode might sound like it's about me, but it's not really about me. It's about hopefully you in some way, shape, or form. Anyhow, now you're trying to shorten a sentence you haven't even finished constructing yet. Then you lose the sentence. Then you pause. Now you're now you're conscious of the pause that you made. Then you're wondering if they're conscious of the pause that you made. Meanwhile, 30 seconds earlier, you had a perfectly good thought. That was one of the biggest things I started recognizing while doing these exercises. Sometimes the problem isn't the thought. Sometimes it's the amount of traffic around it or around a thought. And I started realizing that I probably process verbally. I think while I'm talking, I don't even know. Maybe I'm assuming everybody thinks at some level while they're talking, because how would you know what to say, right? Or maybe people are on some sort of a just do it thing. I don't know. Anyhow, that's important because I think there are some people who seem to formulate the whole answer internally first. Maybe they say, what am I going to say? Oh, yeah, okay, so I'll say this and I'll say that. I don't do that. And, but then they think about it. As I said, they formulate it inside, internally first, and then they say it. I'm not always like that, not usually like that. Sometimes I know where I'm going, I understand the concept, but I'm developing the finished version while the words are already coming out of my mouth. And I don't even know if that makes sense or if there's only 10 of us on this planet like this. Anyhow, and that can actually be a strength, somebody said. That's probably one of the reasons I can sit here and do this podcast by myself. I can start talking about something, make a connection while I'm talking, then realize, as you heard earlier, there's another layer to it that I hadn't completely understood before I started explaining it. Sometimes I understand something better after I've heard myself say it. And I don't think I'm the only person who does this. Hopefully not. Otherwise. So, from the outside, it might look like this. You see, this guy talks too much, but there may be different things happening. And this was another distinction I had to make. Sometimes I'm talking because I'm still discovering the answer. That's exploratory speaking, I guess. I know roughly where I'm going, but I'm building the finished thought out loud in front of people, usually. Other times I already know the answer, but I don't just want to give the answer. That'd be too easy. I want to explain why. Then I want to give you the exception. Then I want to tell you what the larger principle I think it connects to. Then I want to explain how the principle might apply elsewhere or somewhere else. Then maybe I come up with an analogy. Then I realize there's another side to it. Now we've got an entire episode. Here we are. Those aren't exactly the same cognitive processes, are the exact same cognitive process. One is me trying to discover what I think. The other is me trying to teach you what I already think. But to the person waiting for a short answer, which you might have been just now, both things may look exactly the same. He's talking too much. And I had to admit something else. Sometimes I really am just talking too much. Sometimes I start speaking before I decided what sentence should come first. So I put one thing out, then another. Then I correct the first thing, then I explain the correction. Then I realize the correction wasn't exactly what I meant either. Eventually, I land the plane. The problem is everybody else has been circling the air, or circling the airport, I should say, with me. So I'm not trying to create some brilliant explanation for every time I'm long-winded. Sometimes I just need to organize my thoughts better, I realize. But I talk too much is still not specific enough. Sometimes it's poor verbal organization. Sometimes it's exploratory thinking, as I was saying. Sometimes it's teaching. And if you don't know which one you're doing, you don't really know what you're supposed to fix. Then some of the reasoning exercises started showing me another pattern. I seem to naturally separate ideas that people often put together. If I forgive somebody, wait, sorry. If I forgive somebody, does that mean I automatically trust them again? No. Forgiveness and trust aren't the same thing. If somebody's intelligent, does that automatically make them a good leader? No. Intelligence and leadership aren't the same thing. Is confidence the same thing as competence? No. Can somebody win an argument and still lose? Absolutely. You see, you can win the point and completely destroy the interaction. Can somebody have good intentions and still create a bad outcome? Of course. They say some of the worst things that have ever happened in history were done with the best intentions. And I started noticing that my brain likes distinctions. If somebody gives me an absolute statement, I'm immediately looking for where it breaks. Always, never, everybody, nobody, really? Are we sure? That can be useful. It can also be very, very annoying. Nobody wants the, well, technically, and who do we know like that if you're an Office fan? What was his name? Oscar. um, Nobody wants the, well, technically guy around all the time. But again, that's the useful information about how somebody thinks. Then we got into memory. And this one was really interesting because I've said for years that my memory is terrible. Names horrible. You could tell me your name, and I hope nobody that I know is listening. um, you could tell me your name. I can genuinely care about the conversation we're having, and later I might not remember your name at all. I'll remember the interaction. I'll remember what we talked about. I'll remember your face. I might even remember the shirt you're wearing or the shoes. But I might remember, where we're standing. I might remember, yeah, as I said, what you're wearing, what I was wearing, possibly. Probably not. I probably wouldn't remember what I was wearing. I might remember the problem you told me about your kid or your friend. I might remember almost everything in the entire conversation. And somehow your name has left the building. Random numbers can be difficult for me. Random words can be difficult for me. Information that doesn't seem attached to anything. So I did this exercise with that stuff. And some of it was hard. Then I was given a story. There was a guy named Marcus. Marcus is on his way to his aunt's house. He stops at a hardware store. He buys a flashlight, a package of batteries, and a little red toolbox. He gets to his aunt's house and realizes he left the batteries at the store. His aunt laughs, goes into the kitchen, gets him 4 batteries, and they deal with the broken light in the basement. Then we went on and did a whole bunch of other mental exercises, right? Later, the question came back with Marcus's story again. And I remembered most of it. Remember, I only heard the questions one time. Not word for word, but I remembered the structure, who went where, what he bought, what he forgot, what his aunt did, why the batteries mattered, where the broken light was. And that's when I started thinking, maybe my memory isn't bad. It was way too broad. Maybe my memory was much better for meaning than it is for isolated information. Give me a random name, gone. Give me Raymond, the kid from grade 5 class who always wears a Raptors hat. Now, Raymond has somewhere to live. You get it? Give me 4 unrelated instructions and I may struggle. Give me problem, cause, response, next step. Now there's some structure. See, that's different. But then something even more interesting happened with the Marcus story. I remembered that Marcus bought 4 batteries, except guess what? He didn't. The story never said that he did. It said that he bought a package of batteries. His aunt later gave him 4. My brain connected those things, just like that. And because I've been alive long enough to know how batteries are packaged, my brain basically went, okay, flashlights use batteries. The aunt gave him 4. He bought a package, probably 4 in a package. That makes perfect sense. Except it wasn't in the story. My brain took something I remembered, combined it with something I knew about the world, and created a detail. And that's when that little memory exercise suddenly became much more interesting to me, somebody like me, right? Because people do this constantly, especially in relationships. Somebody doesn't call you. Get it? Now, here you go. See, this is how it's all going to connect for you guys. Somebody doesn't call you. That's what happened. Now your brain gets involved. She's upset with me. She lost interest. She's waiting for me to call. Something I said bothered him. She's talking to someone else. He's testing me. Maybe he doesn't respect me. Those are explanations. And if you're good at creating explanations, you can build one that's extremely coherent. But coherent and true are not automatically the same thing. Oh, sorry. This thing was sending. You see, I understand that some of you or someone listening is probably like, oh, that's elementary. I understand what this is. But for someone like me who's just literally just doing self exploration and doing some different exercises or brain exercises and testing, um, and I guess I could technically just look for the definition and what exactly it is in a paragraph or two, but that's not going to help me to fully understand it. And hopefully, for those of you who are still listening, you understand where I'm going with this, or you're at least interested. So, as I said, but coherent and true are not automatically the same thing. So, I started thinking there are 3 things we probably need to separate much more often: what happened, what I think happened, and why I think it happened. You see, those 3 things are not the same level of certainty. As I said, what happened, what I think happened, and why I think it happened. You see, she hasn't answered me since yesterday. That's the fact. I think she's upset. That's an interpretation. I think she's upset because of something I said at dinner. That's an explanation. Only the first one is actually known. And somebody whose brain naturally enjoys making connections might have to be especially careful with this one. You see, because your explanation can become so good that eventually you forget you invented part of it. And then there's the working memory. I had struggled with some number exercises, reversing digits. Somebody gives you like, say, 12, 13, 4. Okay, probably not like that. Probably like 13, 4, 18, 6, and 10. And then they tell you reverse them or reverse them in order, right? It's not so easy. Well, for some of you, I'm sure for some of you, it's like, oh, no problem. Not for everybody. Okay, so it's like you reverse the digits, hold these numbers, move this around mentally. And it would have been very easy for me to conclude, okay, my working memory is bad. Maybe I can only hold 4 digits. Then I did another exercise. There were several words. Some were animals, some weren't. I had to remember all the words, remove the non-animals mentally, keep the animals, and then give the animals back in reverse order. And I could do it. Now, that doesn't mean I've discovered anything clinical about myself. That's not what I'm saying. It means the simple conclusion didn't hold up. Apparently, what I was being asked to do with the information mattered. When there was meaning, when there was a category, when there was a relationship between pieces, I could hold and manipulate more than I thought. And that made me think about how many enormous conclusions we make about ourselves. My memory is terrible. I'm bad at speaking. I'm stupid under pressure. I'm bad with people, maybe. But maybe that's too broad to be useful. Maybe you're bad at remembering arbitrary information that has no context. Maybe you struggle to speak while you're simultaneously monitoring whether the person in front of you approves of you or approves of what you're saying. Or maybe your breath stinks. Exactly. Maybe you understand concepts extremely well, but struggle with rote memorization. I believe I do. Maybe you're good at generating ideas, but slower at deciding which one should come first. Those are much more useful things to actually know. Then I started thinking about eye contact because we're always told eye contact is good. Looking at people, showing confidence, connecting with them. And somewhere along the way, I think I may have turned that into stare directly into somebody's face while you're trying to construct a complicated thought. But if you watch experienced speakers, and this is something that I paid attention to, and that's why I'm talking about it, of course. If you watch experienced speakers, interviewers, even people having a really thoughtful conversation, they don't always do that. And I was remembering a few certain podcasters that do this. If anybody listens to Lex Friedman or even a Joe Rogan or even Jordan Peterson, you'll notice that whenever they're about to talk about something very, very complicated, you'll notice that they look away from faces. And first of all, especially Lex, I was thinking, oh, this guy's a real, real nerd. He's really out there. But then I realized that that's probably something that could probably help me. And hopefully you're going to understand what I mean. You see, sometimes when somebody's trying to construct something complicated, they look away and then they come back. Maybe there's a practical reason for that. Unlike me, who thought, give that eye contact. um, and, a face A face is information. Is this person interested? Are they confused? Are they bored? Are they irritated? Did they find that funny? Did they not? And that's another stream of information your brain is processing. And if you're trying to formulate something complicated, maybe you don't need to process their face for 3 seconds. This is where something from my own history might matter. You see, as a kid, I think from the age of 9 to 12, I was bullied psychologically, not physically. I've talked about that before. I was bullied when I was younger, and I'm not trying to turn this into some sort of childhood trauma episode, but I can understand how somebody who goes through experience like that learns to monitor people, right? Because especially I guess if you're gonna get beaten up, you're trying to pay attention to what's going on, right? If you're gonna get jumped, or if you're gonna get people talking about you or whispering or calling you names or whatever it is, you're monitoring where'd that word come from or who said that. Kind of, you're already on edge, you know. And those of you who've been bullied, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You notice changes in energy. You notice who's laughing. You notice the face, the tone, who's looking at you. That could have been useful at one point. But imagine carrying that same habit into adulthood. Now you're explaining something to your boss, you're already trying to remember the details, separate facts from reports, decide what you can actually say with confidence. And another part of your brain is doing this. Does she look annoyed? Am I embarrassing myself? Is there something in my teeth? Does she think I don't know what I'm talking about? Am I talking too long? Now, the monitoring itself starts interfering with the things you're monitoring. You see an expression, you get anxious. The anxiety disrupts the sentence. You notice yourself struggling. Now you're more anxious. You look at their face again to figure out how badly this is going. And now you're really gone. And now you're paused. And here's what's funny. I can even do this with technology. You know, when I do these episodes or when I try to do a long thinking process, I dictate a lot. And there's a little audio waveform moving while you're talking. I'm sure many of you know about it. Part of me looks at it for a completely, I'd say, legitimate reason. Is it still recording? And for those of you who's given a long explanation in dictation before and then had to redo it 3 or 4 times because for whatever reason the app decided that it didn't want to work, and you think you've probably dictated the most important, amazing thing that you ever recorded in your life, and it didn't record, and you've had to try to duplicate it once or twice, then you understand that anxiety that can possibly give a person. So, as I said, is it recording? If the thing flatlines, am I going to wonder whether it heard anything I just said? But then suddenly I'm thinking, how long have I been talking? Did I pause too long? Is this going to time out? Am I talking too long? You see what I mean? Now, a computer animation has basically become the digital version of somebody tapping their fingers on a desk waiting for me to finish. Again, 2 tasks, right? Talk, monitor whether the talking is being accepted. And I think that may be a larger issue for some people. We spend too much attention, we spend too much attention watching ourselves perform while we're performing. And that the watching starts interfering with the performance itself. You see, people do this on dates. Does she like me? Am I interesting? Did that joke work? Why did they look away? Should I ask another question? Am I talking too much? Now you're not really on the date anymore. You're sitting inside your own head watching yourself on a date. And those are different experiences. And this is where all of this becomes practically, or can I guess all this becomes practical in relationships, I suppose. Because if your brain produces a lot of thoughts, somebody can ask you a very simple question. Why did that bother you? And you've got 6 answers. You felt dismissed. It reminded you of something that happened before. You don't think they intended to dismiss you. You think there's a large communication issue. You're wondering if you're reacting too strongly. And somewhere in there, you've also developed a philosophy about the difference between intentions and impact. All 6 of those thoughts may be legitimate. They don't all need to come out before she gets a chance to speak, though. Maybe the first answer is because I felt dismissed when you said it. Stop. Right there. Let her respond. Maybe the other 5 things come later. Maybe 2 of them don't even need to be said at all. And that's a conversation. And this might be particularly hard for somebody who likes to teach, I suppose. Sometimes the person doesn't need the class. They need one sentence, then room. That isn't becoming less intelligent. It might actually require more discipline because you have to trust that the other thoughts are still there. You don't have to unload all of them immediately just to prove that you thought of them in the first place. And that takes me back to my boss. Because I think I finally know what I could have done differently that day. You see, I didn't need to magically turn myself into somebody who could compress a complicated incident involving several people into a completely confident, 20-second story. And I definitely didn't need to start presenting guesses as facts just because certainty sounds better. I could have said, there are conflicting accounts. Here's what I can confirm. Here's what the people or what they disagree about. Right now, I don't have enough information to confidently say who initiated or who started it. That's it. That's clean, it's accurate, and it's professional. And if she wants everything else, you could say, I can send you a written summary so I don't confuse what's confirmed with what's being reported. Notice what I'm not saying. I'm not saying, sorry, I'm terrible at explaining things. I'm just bad on the fly. I can't do this. No, I'm saying this situation contains uncertainty and I want to represent the uncertainty accurately. Those are very different things because one of the other things I've realized is that some people sound intelligent simply because they sound certain. Certainty and intelligence obviously aren't the same thing. Somebody can confidently somebody can be confidently correct. Somebody can confidently be wrong. And somebody else can hesitate because they can see 3 plausible explanations and don't yet have enough information to give you the honest answer or to choose one. That hesitation isn't always competence. Sometimes it's intellectual caution. But here's where somebody like me still has responsibility. You see, understanding complexity does not excuse communicating badly. I can't give somebody 5 minutes of qualifications, exceptions, and background information and then blame them because they couldn't find my point. I have to learn how to package uncertainty. And I apologize, there's a lot of action happening around me. And isn't that kind of funny on an episode like this? There's been a lot of noise and people walking around and moving and doing stuff. So I'm sorry if I sound kind of rushed and not really sitting on this one. And I wish I really was, because this is a really important episode. Anyhow, not that they all aren't, but this one is just, I guess, dear to my heart because it has to do with some of the stuff that I struggle with. So hopefully this is okay. If it's not, maybe listen to it again. Maybe slow it down. Maybe, you know. Anyhow. So, as I said before, I have to learn how to package uncertainty. I know this. I was told this. I suspected this. I can't verify this. Here's what I recommend. You see, that's clear. You see, you could say, I have to learn. Well, sorry, no. I could say something like, I know this, as in, this is what I know. This happened, this person did this. Or, I was told this. Shirley said the glass was on the table before it got knocked off, right? Or I could say, I suspect this, and then say, I suspect that Susie put a ice cube in the water that wasn't hers, right? Just something like that, right? Anyhow, the point is, I can be very clear about the things that I do know. And that's where I came up with probably the simplest practical thing in this entire episode. And not that I think any of this has been really that simple for someone trying to listen to it. You see, the headline before the documentary, just that simple. The headline before the documentary. Give the conclusion first. Then explain it. Then decide whether the philosophy is actually necessary. Because I love the documentary. If you let me, I'll give you deleted scenes, director's commentary, bonus footage, and the reunion special. But maybe you only asked what happened. So, headline. There are conflicting accounts, and I can't verify who started it. Then, if you want the documentary that I would love to give you, I'll give it to you. So, headline, I felt dismissed. Stop. Let the other person speak. Headline, I disagree. Then explain why. Headline, I don't know. Then explain what you suspect. That one change might make somebody like someone like me look more confident without actually making them more confident at all. Because the thinking was already there. Maybe on your way, you were already thinking of this thing, right? Probably. The other person just got the answer sooner. And there's one more piece. Silence. If you process verbally, silence can feel like you're failing. Somebody asks you a question, and your instinct is to immediately start producing the rough draft out loud. Maybe the answer is to wait 2 seconds. 2 seconds, find the sentence, then say it. The person across from you might experience that as confidence. Meanwhile, you're thinking. You might need to look away. Thank God I finally gave my brain enough time to decide which thought goes first. And I think that's probably the biggest distinction. I got a lot out of this exercise, I can honestly tell you. Some people might not have a problem thinking, they might have a problem selecting. Too much information arrives, too many possible explanations, too many connections, too much awareness of the person listening, too much concern about being accurate, too much desire to make sure nobody misunderstands you. And speech only has one door. Now, I can honestly tell you, sometimes you do get rushed. Somebody will say, okay, give me the Coles notes of what happened. And then you have to disseminate what is important to put into this information verbally so that the boss or whoever it is knows what happened, so that maybe they have to do something so they're on a clock too. If you have time, I say honestly, if they'll give you the time, tell them that you'll email them. If you can't, then I say take this information, just give what you know and leave it at that. And then let them do the questioning. And once they do the questioning, hopefully stuff will become apparent as to what you need to say from their direction, if you understand. So keep it short. Everything can't be walked through at the same time. Something has to go first, obviously. If you don't choose what goes first, everything starts pushing at the door. And that's when you get one of those word salads. That's when you say three versions of the same point. That's when you start explaining the exception before you've even told the person what the rule is. Then they start rushing you. Then you notice them rushing you. Then you get anxious. And now you've got even more traffic. So maybe the goal isn't to become a person who thinks less. Maybe the goal is to become somebody who directs the traffic better. Because maybe you got a lot of information hitting you at the same time and you're just trying to figure out what can I? Yeah. And if you're listening to this while you're driving on a bus or doing dishes, cutting grass, lying in bed, whatever it is you're doing, and you're thinking, wait a minute, I do that. That's really why I wanted to do this episode, because I'm 54 at this point. Yeah, that's right, 54 years old. And I'm just properly understanding some of this now as far as my brain works. Not that the concepts are new, but just kind of new to me in a sense of my own behavior and the way that I deal with the world. And that's one of the reasons I continue making this podcast. You never really know who an episode is for or who's going to find it. Maybe somebody listening to this has spent their entire life saying, I'm bad at communicating. Maybe they've always been told they talk too much. Maybe people rush them. Maybe they lose their words, then somebody looks impatient. Maybe they can explain something beautifully when they're relaxed, but become scattered when they feel evaluated. Maybe they remember an entire story and forget the person's name. Maybe they understand a concept perfectly well, but then they struggle to memorize the paragraph. Maybe they're naturally funny in a conversation, but freeze when somebody says, okay, tell me something funny. Maybe those things aren't contradictions. Maybe different situations are asking for different things from the same brain. And understanding that doesn't mean you never have to change anything. Actually, it gives you something specific to actually work on. For me, I think sequence is becoming fairly simple, or at least this sequence is becoming simple. Sorry, guys. I've been rushing this, and it doesn't sound good. Doesn't feel good coming out. Anyways, almost done here. First thing, think, choose the point, say the point, stop, listen, then decide whether the rest actually needs to be said. And when accuracy matters, what do I know? What was I told? What am I assuming? What do I actually think? What needs to happen next? And if somebody's face changes while I'm trying to figure that out, maybe I don't need to solve their face right now, so maybe look away. Maybe I just need to finish the sentence. Because sometimes somebody who appears to be struggling to explain something isn't struggling because there's nothing going on upstairs. Sometimes there's too much going on upstairs. And the skill isn't creating more thoughts. It's learning which one gets to come out through the door first. Anyhow, guys, I'm Michael Charles Murray. This is You're Probably Right. It took me 54 years to figure out something this simple, although maybe it's not that simple. Anyhow, it is what it is. I'm probably not the only one. All right, guys, until next time, please check out my other episodes. Share, like, subscribe, follow. Anything you can do to help the podcast helps me to continue wanting to do the podcast, although maybe I'll do it anyway. Anyhow, until next time, take care.
This is You're Probably Right. Entertainment first, everything else is just bonus. Opinions, all ours, sometimes backed by research, but never the final word. There are always exceptions, so take it with a grain of salt and a slight dusting of chili powder.